And welcome back. The New Pride Agenda is a statewide organization that's dedicated to addressing the economic, health, racial, and gender identity justice needs of the marginalized LGBTQIA plus individuals. And then we've got now the executive director of the New Pride Agenda, Elisa Crespo. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Daren.
Interesting time, right? I mean, when we look around politically and we see things that are going on, justice is at the forefront for a lot of conversations that's out there, and particularly diversity, equity, and inclusion, as I talked about in the last segment, seems to also be of a challenge. But for yourself, a particular concern too, right?
I think that's right. I think that all across the country we're seeing a well-funded and well-organized effort to roll back the rights of a lot of communities, including the LGBTQ community, women's rights, access to voting rights, etc.
And so for yourself right now, you've got the New Pride Agenda that you're working very closely with and near and dear to your heart. So somebody doesn't know about the New Pride Agenda, make us more familiar.
Sure. The New Pride Agenda is a statewide education and advocacy nonprofit. We advocate and advance the economic, racial, social justice, and health rights of LGBTQ New Yorkers. Our history is such that we believe that there was still far too much hate to stamp out and far too much rights of our community yet unachieved. And so 5 years ago, we formed the New Pride Agenda, and we've been able to do a lot of work in the last 3 years since I've been at the helm of the organization.
And I know one of the things that you're really working on is the Gender Identity, Respect, Dignity, and Safety Act, the GIRDS Act. I want to make sure I had the acronym correct there. So many acronyms here. I got to make sure I got them right, though.
We love an acronym.
Yeah, you do. So talk to me about the GIRDS Act.
Yeah, so this is actually an issue that our tri-state neighbors are ahead of us on. Our friends in California are also leading the charge here. It is still the case in many parts of New York State, not all, but in many counties, the overwhelming majority of the counties where trans people who are incarcerated are not in facilities that align with their gender identity. And you can imagine prisons and jails are a terrible, dehumanizing place for any human being. And I would argue even more so for people of trans experience. This is an issue that I have lived myself, I have been directly impacted by, and so it's very important to me. It's personal.
Yeah. And when we talk about this act, I mean, what kind of resistance are we hearing right now as far as people on the other side?
Well, I think there's a lot of fear-mongering, there's a lot of willful ignorance, there's a lot of stereotypes and misunderstandings of who is trans and what it means to be trans or what it looks like to be trans.
Right.
And my message is that trans people come in all different shapes and sizes, just like every human being on the globe. And so the idea that someone must fit a certain description in order to be socially accepted as trans and therefore in a facility that aligns with their gender, I think is one that we're still trying to dismantle in Albany.
Yeah, there's a lot of education that needs to go on. I think that's more than this show can actually handle today.
Yeah.
But I think that conversations need to be had because to just lump people together and really not know the dealings and all the in-between and be ignorant on the matter can sometimes be detrimental to those who are really deeply impacted by that. And I think a conversation as I had with many people within the LGBTQ community who've said, listen, you know what, we just need to have conversation to let people know exactly what it is. And I think people just rather go off the cuff sometimes and really not be able to address and have and have that dialogue. How important do you think dialogue is when it comes to really addressing some of these issues? Because they could probably get a speedier pass through legislation sometimes, and sometimes not. I know, but there could be a little bit more on the legislative side, some traction.
Yeah, well, we spend a lot of time in Albany doing just that, education. So we would like to spend more of our time pushing forward legislation, but unfortunately, we have to spend half of that time, if not more, just kind of helping people understand what the issues are in order to get to a place where they have that moment where they're like, I get it now. And so the issue of GIRDS, it's a public safety issue, right? Trans people are about 8 or 9 times more likely to experience physical and sexual assault while they're incarcerated, especially if they're not in a facility that's aligned with their gender identity.
I want to walk through a couple of things here, and I'll let you give me a quick response on these here. Passing the Housing Access Voucher Program, what does that mean?
a game-changing piece of legislation that we should have funded in last year's state budget, but we did not. It's essentially a statewide housing voucher program that would have been eligible for people regardless of their immigration status or their criminal record. It would have allowed people to pay no more than 30% of their income on rent. So think of it as a state version of the Section 8 program.
Talk to me a little bit about the New York State Gender Affirming Care Shield Bill.
Yeah, so this is one of the bills that we championed 2 sessions ago. As you know, if you turn on the news, if you read the newspaper, far-right, fringe, extremist politicians are trying to roll back the rights of many people, including trans youth, successfully so in 25 states in this country. But in New York, we worked with our champion, State Senator Brad Hoylman-Siegel, and we worked with Tony Simone, who represents Hell's Kitchen, and we made sure that gender-affirming care would be protected. And we now see trans youth and their families coming from conservative strongholds all across the country, coming to New York to receive nation-leading gender-affirming care. And so the legislation is about protecting the providers who provide that kind of care and making sure that New York is not cooperating with any subpoenas for any nefarious reason from any conservative state across the country.
Talk to me about fighting against the anti-trans sports bill. I know this has been a hot topic, particularly during the Olympics, coming out of the Olympics, before that too, but I think even more magnified in the Olympics. And you say that you want to fight against that. For somebody who's out there saying, why fight against that? Your perspective.
Well, because first and foremost, sports are important for all human beings, right? Everyone should be able to participate in a sport regardless of their gender identity or expression. I wake up every day shocked that in the state of New York, the home of the LGBTQ civil rights movement, the home of Stonewall, that there's a county here where trans women only cannot play in facilities, county-run facilities on Nassau County. It really is a ploy and a manufactured crisis by right-wing politicians who are seeking political gain to scapegoat and to fearmonger and to divide and conquer. And I think that division is not a strategy. And so what we're seeing on Nassau County is the county executive, Bruce Blakeman, trying to instill fear in Nassau County voters and trying to say these people are not like you, they're different, and they're taking away your rights, which nothing could be further away from the truth. And I think that tax-paying voters on Nassau County should be weary because there are far more issues that need to be dealt with on Nassau County than legislating sports and people's bodies. The message that I want to bring out to your audience is that the same people that are attacking the rights of women to get access to abortion, contraception, the same people that are rolling back our rights to vote are the same people that are attacking the trans community and access to gender-affirming care and access to trans people to playing in sports.
Before we leave, we got to find out if somebody wants to get information in regards to legislation, stuff that we're talking about right now, and stuff that we probably didn't even cover yet. How do they go about doing that?
They can go to thenewprideagenda.org or they can follow us on Instagram at newprideagenda.
It's been great having you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Got to come back. All right. Listen, stay here. Don't go nowhere. Hold on. No, you got to stay because if not, you walk in front of the camera, then I can't do my lines, and it goes like that.
I'm ready to go.
We're going to keep her here. Listen, for more information, go ahead and visit the website at newprideagenda.org. We encourage you, don't go anywhere. We'll be back with more Open coming up right after this. She's going to walk off the set during the commercial. We're going to put somebody else on after the commercial. Somebody else will be back. We'll be back in a minute.